It's a beautiful and bright morning. Good morning, Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us on another beautiful edition of Consumer Watchdog. Consumer Watchdog is where we dissect and inform consumer rights protection and safety. Today we'll be looking at something vital and important. We'll be talking about the Fccpc new regulations on money lenders. And the Fccpc has begun enforcing the digital, electronic, online and non-traditional consumer lending regulations for 2025, delisting the digital money lending operators that failed to regularize their status by the 5th of January 2026 deadline. The Chief Executive Officer, Tunji Bello, confirmed the withdrawal of conditional approval for non-complaint lenders to enhance the market integrity. An emphasis was placed that the compliance deadline was the 5th of January 2026, making the end of the transition. Experts say the measure's aim is to uphold regulatory standard, curb harassment and prevent data breaches in the digital lending sector. And now the Fccpc is conducting a phased, rigorous enforcement process with further sanctions possible for continued non-compliance. And meanwhile as well, the Commission has urged consumers to only engage with approved digital lenders and report any illegal or harassing activities. And joining me on the conversation for better understanding on this critical situation, we have Barrister Emmanuel Inyada. But let's go on a short break. We'll be right back.
Hey there, do you know in the world today, everyone is a consumer, and as consumers, we all have the right to be heard.
In Nigeria today, as a consumer, you have all right to product information, right to fair pricing, right to return goods, right to product labeling, right to fair dealings, and a lot more.
Well then, have you heard about the new media channel?
ConsumerHalla TV.
ConsumerHalla TV.
ConsumerHalla TV.
At ConsumerHalla TV, our goal is to inform and educate consumers in Nigeria with insightful news alongside development within the fast-paced world of consumers through well-researched, specialized, and analytical content.
Our vision at ConsumerHalla TV is to create an engaging platform that provides right connections for meaningful brands in Nigeria, thus creating a more caring world for consumers where business thrive.
And guess what? Our ConsumerHalla brand is the first consumer complaint resolution portal in Nigeria, powered by a 72-hour feedback mechanism. We offer consumer advocacy, informative talk shows, branding promotions, advertising, and lots more. Connect with us via our YouTube channel at ConsumerHalla TV. Follow us on our Facebook page, ConsumerHalla TV, our Instagram page, ConsumerHalla TV, and do well to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscription is free, ConsumerHalla TV. Fell victim of this harassment, and it was a whole lot. I knew the battle. I have to call it battle. I knew the battle. I went in before we made sure everything was sorted out. So this new update, these new regulations from the Fccpc, in brief, what does this mean, and how will the Fccpc enforcement measures affect consumers who have taken loans from non-complaint digital lenders?
Okay, thank you so much, Iri.
That's the name,
yes. Ayomikole. So it's a good regulation because I think one way or the other, we are all victims of this regulation. And again, thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, you're welcome.
One way or the other, we are all victims. I'm sure you, like you mentioned, the experience of your cousin. I've had the experience as well with family members and friends from these they call them loan sharks. Some of them are predatory lenders. And the truth is that many of them operate without licenses in quotes. So, but the Fccpc's role as a consumer protection or watchdog in regulating these people is a welcome development. So with the DION regulations, which is the digital, electronic, online, and the non-traditional lenders regulations, is more or less a regulation to control them, to curb predatory lending practices from lenders, to protect the consumers now, those who take loans from these companies, and to also provide a redress mechanism for them to lay complaints and also imposes penalties. So it provides for registration. So everyone in the space, in the lending space, they have to register with the Fccpc. And after that is done, they also have to comply with the provisions of the regulations as it deals with the interest rate, for instance. It must not be excessive. That is one. Another thing is that they have to also ensure that they handle data properly. So the fact that you have access to my data does not mean that you now start contacting third parties, especially in cases of recovery. And of course, also to prevent harassment. So that's what generally the regulation is about to...
All right, I'm happy about these regulations, but now let's move more into the conversation. When you were making your analysis earlier on, you made mention of license or something like licenses. Do you think it's ideal for anyone to venture into the market without having license or licenses?
Well, it's not, definitely it's not ideal, because in Nigeria, it's also very regulated. Especially when you are operating in the lending space. We have the CBN, who regulate banks and other financial institutions. But what we usually have when it deals with, when we talk of money lending, is that there is a category of license called the money lender's license, and it's usually granted by states. So many of these people get this license and of course, they get it from the state government, and they start operating without taking other steps to comply with regards to protection of user data. And many of these tech companies as well, because due to, of course, we are in the age of technology, everything we do with our phone, the internet and all. So they take advantage of the internet, they build software applications, get the money lending license. And they more or less build for the technology, for the purpose of technology and getting money, not necessarily to comply with regulation. So it's not ideal, but it's a regulated space. So if they don't have a license, it means that they're actually violating the law. But the role of the FCCPC now, by passing this regulation, as a consumer protection watchdog, what they did is to make sure that predatory lending practices are curbed with this regulation. So that's
now let's get into the conversation better, because for me, I think a lot of consumers are still not clarified about this new regulation, so they need clarity, they need more awareness about this. I think it's high time we understand the regulatory framework about this new development, and what are the key provisions of the DION, the digital, electronic and online and non-traditional consumer lending regulations 2025, and how do these regulations protect consumers aside from the fact of harassment?
Okay, so the regulations was passed last year, I think sometime in July, 21st of July 2025, and the key provisions includes, of course, the general purpose of that regulation is to protect consumers and also provide a regulatory framework for digital lenders to, or should I say lending institutions generally, to carry out their business practice in a responsible way. So the first thing is that it made for mandatory registration. So all digital lenders. So the regulation basically creates a broad scope of who are digital lenders. So it covers both regulated institutions, banks, and microfinance banks, so all down to even individuals. Like, so if you're an individual and you have a money lending license, you are more or less, by reason of the regulation, a lender under that regulation. So that's one. So they have to register, and failure to register means that they are operating illegally in Nigeria. So that's number one. The second is that it created a system of transparency. So more or less the way they handle user data, and user information, and also the interest rates they have to very, very clearly state what those things are. So interest rates, for instance, one of the reasons why people are not able to pay back their loans is that you are, for instance, you are borrowing from them, and they tell you you have to pay 30% interest rate. And the next thing, the way they calculate it, it's unclear. They are saying 30% per week, whereas in your mind it's maybe 30% for the tenure of repayment. So they have to be very clear.
And coupled with the fact that if you are not meeting up with the deadline,
Exactly.
the interest rates will be accumulating more and more.
More and more and more. So those are some of the practices that this regulation is trying to curb. That you have to be very transparent, very clear, explaining to the simplest steps what this interest rate are and how do you calculate it. And even if you are doing it, it must not be too high. It must not be so high that it's unconscionable and unfair, because you borrowed me 100,000, you are collecting 240,000 naira.
That's a whole lot. That's
terrible. So that's what this regulation also does. Another thing also, I mentioned data protection earlier. You know, user data is very sensitive, so they have to handle it with care. So the regulation also provides for that. So you don't, even if you get access to my contacts, you don't just call them and start harassing them. You don't just call them and start telling them, sending curses at them. And of course, I know the FCCpc, they've worked with the Nigerian Data Protection Agency, the NDPA, to NDPC Commission, to
Nigeria Data Protection Commission.
Yes, to regulate the aspect of how users or consumers are harassed, especially in relation to frequent calls. Like you can get 50 calls in a day.
I think frequent call is still better. Some people will go as far as, you know, posting posters that this person is HIV, a criminal, has HIV, you know, slept with dog, a whole lot of harassment going out right there.
Absolutely, and that's what it's regulating. Of course, they've taken steps before the regulations. They've taken steps in the past to enforce against these institutions. Several fines have been meted out after investigation to many of them. So, but they put out these regulations for digital lenders to understand that these are important. And also the issue of the issue of penalties. So the enforcement mechanism, it's also very, so it's also stated there, what are these administrative penalties when you flout the regulations? So those are some of the key provisions in the...
And those insights are great, Barrister Emmanuel. Let's talk about the major challenges of digital lenders in perspective to those new regulations. What are the major challenges money lenders, you know, can face with these new regulations?
Well, no company operating in the because I would like to think of it's two-pronged.
Please bring it on.
So the challenges with regards to one, their business, and so how it's the impact on consumers or the users of the product. So, you know, from last year when the regulation was first passed, there was a period that was given for all existing digital lenders to regularize their, like, register, and if they've not regularized it, they are basically delisted and barred from operation. And that ended early this year, on 5th of January. So the impact now is that, number one, it's very expensive, in quotes. And so, for instance, you get a money lending license and you're operating from Lagos. Maybe you don't really have that much money, and now you have to pay some millions and go through a whole process to register with the FCCpc. Well, I think they made it also easy. From experience, it's not that difficult, but then they find it that, okay, it's too much regulation, over-regulation, too many things to comply with. So that's one of the challenge they have. So they also have the issue of registration. They have the issue also of compliance, because it now becomes more difficult to keep up with compliance in the space. So you have to comply with requirements of the NDPC. You have to comply with requirements of the FCCpc. You have to comply with the requirements of the CBN. You have to comply with the requirements of the NCC, because digital lending in this case also covers issues. Even telecom companies are also covered. For instance, when you borrow credit from them, it also covers those kind of people. Like when you borrow airtime, it also covers, because that's digital lending as well. It covers not just cash, but extends even to other forms of lending or barter practices. So that's another challenge, the issue of compliance. And another one is the issue of the fact that if they can't register, they have to stop business. So it means now they have to now start spending more money with regards to legal, and maybe trying to find investors who will bring in money, compliance with regards to, because it's not just about registration, it's an ongoing requirement. The regulation provides for a renewal after every 3 years, and there are fees that they have to keep paying after every 3 years. And the regulation provides an amount for renewal, but it's also still discretionary. So the FCPC can decide to increase the renewal fees, whenever they decide so. So it also makes it very unsure and unstable for business. Of course, it's a business, and these people also there has to be certainty with regards to how much are we paying for, how much are we paying for compliance. So of course it takes up cost, but then I think it's an important regulation, and that's one of the challenge. And then the second challenge is, when I mentioned with regards to consumers, is that it now becomes very difficult to, let's say, because they have practice where, so how do we show that we have crossed the line? Where have we crossed the line? So they start thinking, how do we get back our money? Especially when you know, maybe you are, for instance, Nigerians are very difficult people to, when you borrow their money, it's very difficult to get back on. So what is good business practice to get back our money from people who are unwilling to pay? You understand? So that's another issue, like for them dealing with consumers. So they have to be very careful. And consumers themselves can, let's say, once they run away with the money, how would they get back their money? So that's why a lot of them carry out this predatory practice, which is, of course, it is condemnable. But then we have to balance it out, make it less expensive to comply with the law, and also make it easier for them to be able to, let's say, report consumers as well who refuse to, let's say, pay back their loans. There was no provision in that regard. So those are some of the challenges.
Interesting. You making mention of crossing the line. I think that will lead us through to this aspect of angle right now. What specific actions constitute harassment under the new regulations, and how will the FCCPC determine if a lender has crossed the line?
Well, so as a lawyer, I'll think of, in determining what it means to, of course, that one, they look at the facts. So you don't just determine by reason of this is what the person said. You look at the facts, you look at the situation, you look at the circumstance. So what the FCCPC does as a regulator is that they investigate. They look at the practice. Is it that user data was breached? Or should I say the consumer data was breached? That's one. Did they send unsolicited messages to third parties? Were there frequent calls and threatening messages? So those are some of the things they look at when they look at the facts. So there's a redress mechanism, a complaint mechanism. So I feel what the FCP does is that they look at the facts, because and they look at both sides. So that's where they now determine that, okay, this is actually, and of course that also determines the severity of the penalty, of the fine they met out to the erring party. So that's
all right, if you're just joining us now, this is Consumer Watchdog on ConsumerHalla TV, where we inform consumers about their right, protection and safety. And this morning on the program, we're having a detailed conversation about the FCCPC new regulations on money lenders. And with me in the studio for more clarity, helping us dissect this pressing issue, we have Barrister Emmanuel. Barrister Emmanuel, let me have your standpoint on this issue. What are the necessary measures you think FCCPC has to take to protect consumers from predatory lending practice, and how effective are these measures?
The measures they have to take. Well, I think the most they can do is, the first thing they can do is basically, of course, regulation, which they are doing well in that regard. So, and we've had issues where they've had to take down apps from app stores, from several digital
So is it that the
platforms.
consumers that borrowed money before taking out the app are not going to pay the money? Or
Well, no, I'm saying they've enforced against erring lenders,
okay, all right.
where they've had to take down some of these apps. Then, am I answering the question correctly?
Yes, please go on.
Yes, they've also taken steps to impose fines ranging from 10 million to 20 million on erring lenders. That's another step they've taken. So aside from regulation, telling them this is how you play, some of them, like I mentioned, some of them are not aware. It's just a practice. It's just a business practice which is unfair. And that's all they know. So now the FCC has, okay, they've come out and like, so look at this regulation. This is what you have to do to be compliant, from registration to how you go after erring lenders or delinquent debtors in that sense. And they've done that as well. And of course, also they've also created a redress mechanism. So I think what they need to do more now is in the area of consumer education. Awareness as well. So you have to, not just consumer, but also everyone in every stakeholder, from the lending companies to the borrowers as well, the general public. Let them know, this is what you have to do. This is the steps. These are the steps you can take when they. So it's not. It has to be balanced, but you know, of course, it's still consumer protection as well. You have to also make sure that people are protected from unfair lending practices. So those are some of the steps they've taken, and I also think they also have to look at the regulation as well. They should look at the criticisms of stakeholders and update that regulation from time to time to accommodate present realities. So for instance, like I mentioned earlier, I feel like the requirements for registration is too hectic, and the period of renewal is too short. That's my own personal criticism of the law or of regulation in that sense. So they should look at these criticisms and, of course, take steps to regulate, or should I say update that law to make it easy. Because at the end of the day, we're looking at ease of doing business. So they should make it easy as well for money lenders. But yeah, so those are some of the things they can do. Not push people out of markets, because this regulation definitely will push a lot of people. Some people won't be able to operate anymore. That's what it does. And it will lead to some form of, it reduces access to credit as well. So when your normal lender is no longer operating, even though they are trusted, because of they are unable to comply or they failed to comply with regulations as such, they won't be able to carry on business. So they should make it easier for people to be able to.
Let's review without critics right now, looking at the lending industry in abroad, the UK, the USA, and the lending industry in Nigeria. We can see that the gap is very, the gap is much. How can the digital lending industry in Nigeria balance growth with regulatory compliance, and as well including it with consumer protection?
So the lending industry, balance growth. Well, I'm a tech lawyer as well, and I like to think that compliance must be built into the tech as such. So you are not just building a tech product, you are building a financial institution as well. So when you are, so most of tech companies, we have a lot of them. I don't want to, I can mention names.
You just make mention of one.
Yeah,
okay.
So for instance, we could, let's say Fair Money, for instance, or OPay. They also provide products as well. So you don't just build a tech product and put it out there and get people to borrow, and you build compliance into it. So from the moment when you are onboarding the user, they're already aware that, okay, these are the interest rates. While you are building, you're already taking steps to get these licenses. Even if you are collaborating with existing institutions, you're also making sure they are informing the regulator. So we are not just building in isolation. So I think in Nigeria, compared to other parts of the world, we are getting it right. At least we are stepping up. We have one of the most advanced fintech ecosystem in the world. A lot of our transactions now in Nigeria are electronic compared to even some developed countries of the world. So I think in that aspect, we're doing very well. Of course, I think the issue we have now are issues relating to regulation and over-regulation. So those are some of the issues we have now. But for growth, compliance should be built into that process. So when you are building, you have the regulators in mind. What are they saying? How do we? So you also try to take proactive steps by reaching out to them. So for instance, you are building something very innovative in the lending space. Let's say you're building something where people can trade by barter. In that sense, okay, who are the regulators I have to work with? Are there specific regulations around this? If there are none, go to the nearest regulator and inform them, this is what I'm doing. What steps do I have to take to comply? So you build it into the product. So I think that is the best way they can balance it. Not you build, then you now start struggling to comply. Before you know it, your investors are off. Before you know it, the banks are already, if you borrowed money, you are not doing business. They're already calling for a repayment. Before you know it, business is down and you start struggling. So I think that's the...
All right, the conversation is still going on, but let's go on a short break. I find something to munch on and enjoy this program. But also, it's Consumer Watchdog on ConsumerHalla TV. We'll be right back. Let's go on a short break. Hello consumers, you have the right to be heard, absolutely. So join us on the conversation, share your brand experience, where you tell us all your experiences about brands on the outer world via our YouTube channel every Wednesday from the hour of 4:20 to 5:20. You can watch us via our YouTube channel, ConsumerHalla TV, and subscription is free. Follow us on all our social media platforms, ConsumerHalla TV. Share your brand experience. It's about storytelling. It's about experiences.
Hello consumers, you're welcome to another exciting episode of Consumer Voice on ConsumerHalla TV. I am Matilda Omenai. As you already know, Consumer Voice is a show where we'll be visiting different places in Lagos to check out people's preferences, hear what the consumers have to say about different leading brands that they make use of.
Hello, it's your boy here, Iremofeko Foworola, and you know what? They call me the AUF General Overseer. Every day is a blessing and it is meant to be enjoyed maximally with AUF packages that put a smile on our faces. And guess what? That is why this show AUF is for you. You can get to know about trendy market slashes, promos, offers and juicy deals that put a smile on your faces, and you can always enjoy them maximally. And you know one thing that is so interesting about this show? It is a blend of English and Pidgin. As I dey run you English, now I go dey marry am with Pidgin, make am spicy. So catch me every time on the show to enjoy more about trendy AUF packages. Peace.
Public services.
Good to be back again here. If you're just joining us on the conversation, this is Consumer Watchdog on ConsumerHalla TV, where we inform consumers about the right and safety that they need to know in our economy. And today we're talking about something very critical that we need to pay our attention to, talking about the Fccpc new regulations on money lenders. And for proper understanding, we have Barrister in the studio, Barrister Emmanuel. Barrister Emmanuel, now let's continue with the conversation. Now taking it back when we started the conversation, I remembered fully well that you made mention of the new regulations would help the digital lenders to be able to be transparent. And now talking about transparency, let's start from this place. How would the Fccpc ensure that digital lenders are transparent about the long terms and interest rates, and what constitutes the fair practice?
Okay, so for transparency, I think it's what the FCCPC have done with the regulation is that they made it a necessary requirement for compliance. They didn't just say operate. They are saying you have to be clear with the digital lenders, because sometimes people don't have time to read the terms and conditions. So they are making, I think, like, you have to make it very simple enough for people to understand that, okay, if I'm borrowing 10,000 naira, I'll be paying back this amount at so time. So that's what the FCC have done. So if there is a violation, of this particular requirement, they won't really know except someone reports.
Now, I was about going there. That what are the consequences for lenders who fail to register with the Fccpc or comply with the new regulations?
Well, for non-compliance, number one is that they can't even operate in this space. If they are operating illegally, because it's now a legal requirement. So the FCCPC Act actually empowers the Federal Commission on Consumer Protection Commission to regulate in that regard. So they're operating illegally. And the second is that if they were already listed, they're listed as a money lender, like they have their license revoked. So they're already registered. So that's another consequence for non-compliance, because the major provisions for compliance is not just about registering with the FCPC. You have to comply with everything they say with regards to how you deal with consumers. And to be honest, they really won't know if a consumer does not report or a user does not report, or they investigate. So it means that, and they also made provisions for reporting and redress in the regulation. So if you feel, okay, this particular lending app or this particular money lender, they are not doing things properly, or maybe their lending practices are unfair, report to the FCPC. And they impose fines as well. So aside from the listing, they also impose fines if they find them guilty, and of course, there are cases where individuals, aside from going to the FCPC, they can take up, let's say, or the FCPC can take up maybe criminal action, or can also lead to civil liability as well for the company. So those are some of the protective measures that are in place for the general public, especially when they are dealing with predatory lenders in that sense. So.
All right, I believe that this regulation, of course, will tame a whole lot of things, but for the sake of the consumers who are out there that believe, oh, this is Nigeria, anything goes, what recourse do borrowers have if they are experiencing harassment or unfair treatment from a lender, and how can they report this incident?
So the FCPC, they have a platform where, of course, lawyers like to be consulted. Go and meet a lawyer. But before you even go to a lawyer, by yourself, you can report to the FCCPC. You can just, I think they have a website portal where you can just go to, even an email address. They can just send your complaints to, narrate the entire incident to them, include receipts of maybe evidence you have, maybe text messages or emails, and send to them. And they will take it up and investigate. And the law requires that the commission begin investigation after 24 hours of receipt. That's what the regulation also provides for as well. So they have a duty to also investigate. So don't say, okay, if I report, they won't do anything. Report, then they will take it up and start investigating. And they issue fines from as high as, depending on the fact as well. But in the regulation, I was seeing fines for, let's say, for individuals for failing to register. There were fines of maybe about 50 million, then for companies about 100 million. So it's hefty, it's a lot, but then I think it's a good one. At least you know that there is a place you can run to when you are a victim, in quote now, of some of these lending practices.
Barrister, I think I need to give you your kudos about that update, and because a lot of consumers still believe that after the harassment, when it comes to reporting to the right channels like FCCPC and some other regulatory bodies, they're always reluctant. Having the mentality that we will not get the right treatment. They will not when it comes to talking about consumers getting their rights being aired, is being maltreated, is being abused, is being tampered on. So this makes a lot of consumers get really relaxed, reluctant, not reporting the right things at the right authorities. But I think with this your analysis, this would give them an hint of, okay, doing the right thing at the right time. Just take the step first and see what will come of it. Thank you so much for that. How will the FCCPC work with other agencies such as the Nigeria Data Protection Commission to address data privacy concerns and protect borrowers in regards to personal information?
Well, I know they've been working together, especially the FCCPC and the NDPC. As far back as when the NDPC was still NITDA, I know they have a joint task force where they jointly investigate and of course penalize some of these area institutions. Like there are several cases that they've done. So I know there's interagency collaboration in that regard, and I also know aside from the NDPC, they also collaborate with law enforcement agencies like the EFCC, the police, especially in cases of fraud or in cases where a crime has been committed. And of course, the NCC as well, the Nigerian Communications Commission, they collaborate with them. So the FCCPC is more or less like a super regulatory agency, because when they talk about consumer protection, it deals with all sectors of the economy. So it means that they have to also collaborate with all these sector regulators, especially when it deals with, let's say, issues relating to consumer protection for those agencies. Or, you know, they also regulate competition when we're looking at unfair business practice from one business to the other, and of course setting up anti-competitive measures to regulate the industry. So they collaborate with a lot of industry. And I know they have a joint task force with the NDPC when it deals with data privacy concerns.
Barrister Emmanuel, we are moving gradually to the end of the conversation, but right now curiosity make me ask, because there are a lot of consumers at home watching us, and that's this question will be crossing their mind. How long do you think this will take if a consumer, you know, reports any harassment? How much do you what's the duration of this issue being sorted out?
So it depends, because it depends. I know I've handled one that took a period of less than 3 months. Yeah, and I know there are some that they've not even attended to. So it depends on what they consider worthy. But the moment you report, they usually open the case like within a short period of time and they start investigating.
You made mention of that there are still some cases pending.
Yes.
What could be the cause of that? Is it that they've not gotten to the root of the matter, or there is still a whole lot of uncertainty around
it could be that, number one, that maybe there are no, of course, you know, it's Nigeria, so a lot of things may have gone through maybe the administrative works, and they think it's not the case that they need to pursue. So maybe there's not a failure to communicate back to the consumer that, okay, we've looked at it. We don't think you have a strong case as such. That's one. I think that's one. That may be one reason. Number two, maybe issues relating to personnel. Maybe they don't have a lot of people looking at it, or someone just mixed it up. But I know the FCCPC, they've been doing a good job, especially with regards to consumer enforcement and protection. They've been doing a good job so far, and it also depends too, because some may take a longer period of time to investigate, some a shorter period of time to investigate. And I know they usually call them for meetings, they ask questions during that period of investigation as well. So,
all right, it's been a very interesting one on the conversation, and I must say you've made a whole lot of insight, which there is a whole lot to munch on. Thank you so much, Barrister Emmanuel. Now to end the conversation, let's have your pattern shot. And what advice would you give to consumers who are, you know, experiencing problems with digital lenders?
Well, so the first thing is to make sure that you're also not violating the law. So
in what sense?
You're not harassing them in return. So, you know, Nigerians, they insult you, you want to do your own back. So that's the first thing. Try to also be calm, and of course, let them know that what they are doing is against the law. There are times that it's difficult to pay back. Of course, you're the one owing money. It doesn't mean that they now make you lose your dignity because you're owing money. So if the harassment, if you warn them and they continue, you report to the FCCPC, or you contact a lawyer to help you pick it up. And usually I advise you go through a lawyer so that at least they can give you preliminary advice on what steps to take and all the options available to you. So that's I think what I would say. And also, you're a consumer, you have a right. A lot of people are not aware that they have rights as consumers.
Thank you so much. That is one of the main issues we are facing in Nigeria. A lot of consumers do not know the right they have.
Yeah. So you have to be aware that you have a right. As a consumer, you have a right to dignity of human person.
Right to safety.
To safety. Your data is sensitive. So if they are calling your pastor because you are giving money, that's serious. Or they are calling a business partner. I had a client once, and I was called like, do you know this person? And at the end of the day, realized that the person did not even take a loan. So that's another issue as well, because they do, and that's another issue with lenders. There's a way they automate it such that even without taking the loan, they put it in your name that you actually took a loan from them. So those are some of the, even in the regulation, it's actually provided for there, like they regulate it as well. So those are some of the issues. So once these things happen, you don't just overreact and maybe violate the law in return. You go through the right channels, speak to a lawyer, or like I mentioned, like I also report directly to the Fccpc as a Nigerian, and they'll respond as well.
It's been a very beautiful one, I must say, but this conversation will not be well ironed if I don't make mention of this. Do you think it's appropriate for the money lenders to reach out to family members, friends, because it is what we see right now? They just, any little thing, they contact, this person is owing, and you have to pay, mounting it on, family, relative. Do you think it's proper?
It's not proper in my opinion, even though they try to find the way around it using data privacy contracts to say, okay, you give consent. I feel like the only people that should be contacted are parties to that transaction. And who are the parties to a lending transaction usually? We have the lender, we have the borrower, and we have either a guarantor or a shortee. So if there are no clearly mentioned guarantors or shortees, I don't think you should reach out to anyone else or harass anyone else because of, so someone is owing you. So, and the regulation should provide for that you don't reach out to third parties or harass them in return. So it's not proper, it's not appropriate. And yeah, that's why you should also complain when these things happen. Don't let it, because the more they complain against a particular institution, the more they are flagged on the radar of the FCPC, the more sanctions will be taken against them. I know in the past, so many lending institutions, so many were deregistered. I think sometime in last year, I think they do it frequently, where they delist platforms and they remove them, like inform the public that this platform has been delisted, and warn them from working or operating in Nigeria. And of course, so for me, they've been doing a good job because it has reduced. I don't know if you observed. I don't know. For recently, I don't get those messages anymore. Because people I don't even know. There was someone the one that shocked me was there was someone that was on the opposing side of a transaction I worked on, and something happened, and they sent me messages on WhatsApp about this person, and I forgot the person until I had to now think, oh, okay, so it's unfair actually. So, but yes, and the law, of course, it's a good one, and I'm glad that they've taken this upon themselves too.
I'm also glad about it. Thank you so much, Barrister Emmanuel Inyada. I hope I got Inyada. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us on the conversation. And now this is where we draw the curtain. Of course, it's been a insightful one. And the new Fccpc regulations on money lenders. He said a whole lot of things, but I think for me, one thing that is a take home is to ensure that we consumers always make sure that we know our rights. Knowing our rights is very vital and it's pivotal. And aside from that, we should always have access to information, which is very, very important. Thank you so much for joining us. We're back again next week on another beautiful edition of Consumer Watchdog on ConsumerHalla TV. I am Ire Ayomikunle AK. Please remember to follow us on all our social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are out of the studio. Stay out of trouble. Bye for now. Thank you.